Hi, I'm Nicholas Wong, and I'll be presenting the topic of Hadoop and MapReduce with my partner Matthew Sierra. Before we get into Hadoop and MapReduce, I want to quickly touch on the topic of big data. So, what is big data? Big data is the data that has the four V's: volume, velocity, veracity, and variety. Volume being the sheer amount of data, velocity being the rate of data ingestion, variety being the many different types of data there, and veracity being the amount of uncertainty in the data. Now that we've defined big data, I would like to talk about some of the challenges we face working with it. First, with the large volume nature of big data, it is hard to find the processing power to analyze it in a reasonable amount of time. Also, with the data being so variable, it is hard to efficiently separate and analyze the different streams. Lastly, incompleteness. With big data, it is normal for there to be some inconsistencies and errors within our datasets, so it is important to be able to have a system in place to support the many pre-processing steps to correct this heterogeneity. Moving on from big data to Hadoop, I wanted to talk about how it all started. Hadoop started as a side project at an open source organization called Apache to provide text search and large databases. Dong Cutting from Yahoo designed Hadoop, naming it after his son's elephant. The project was then later released as an open source Apache project in 2007. Fast forward a year, and Apache upgraded the project to top level in 2008, and then another year later, the project was put through a performance test where they were able to show Hadoop sorting a terabyte of data in 17 hours. MapReduce, which is one of the main components of Hadoop, was made popular in 2004 in a paper released at Google. The paper was called MapReduce: Simplified Data Processing on Large Clusters by Jeffrey Dean and Sanjay Gemawat. Now, on to Hadoop. Hadoop is an open source software licensed by Apache Software Foundation. Hadoop was designed for users to be able to process substantial amounts of data on clusters. The features of Hadoop include HDFS, distributed file system, Yarn, which is the resource management, and common libraries and utilities. Now to talk about MapReduce. MapReduce is the main feature of Hadoop. It is a programming model that allows for parallel and distributed computing on large clusters of machines. It is the function responsible for resolving the issues with processing power and speed to analyze big data. This means MapReduce gives Hadoop the functionality to process data at an efficient volume and speed that wouldn't have been possible before. Next, Matthew will go over some sample code of Hadoop and MapReduce.
So moving on, we are going to talk about a sample code that I ran on my computer. First, I needed to install Hadoop on Mac OS, so I used brew install Hadoop. This is the homebrew package that you can install through terminal. Once you do that, you have 4 files that you need to update with some code. And then you can start all.sh to start Hadoop, and then you can JPS inside terminal to make sure that your name node, your data node, your resource manager, and a couple other things are running properly. The sample code that I wanted to run is the Hadoop MapReduce example that's in the MapReduce folder. It's a jar file. First you have to create a text document that you want to count the words in, and then you want to create a directory on the local host, the HDFS. So I created a user file, and then I put file1.txt into the user file, and then I ran the MapReduce. As you can see here on the right-hand side of the screen, this is some of the feedback from terminal once I ran the jar file. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see on the left-hand side is the input file. Just contains a couple sentences, and then on the right-hand side, this is the output file that you can find on the local host, and it counts the words. It has, there are 2 thes in this file. There are two this. There are six under lowercase the, so it does parse it out by capital T and lower t for the. And that's just one example of running a MapReduce jar file in your terminal on Mac OS. Moving on to thought leaders and conferences, we just wanted to highlight some individuals. Tom Davenport, he is a professor of IT management at Babson College. He has several Harvard Business publications, and he is one of the thought leaders on Hadoop. Paul Zikopoulos is a VP from IBM, and he also contributed to Hadoop for Dummies. And then Ben Lorica at Big Data, a very brazen name on Twitter. He's a data scientist at Databricks, and he's a former chief data scientist at O'Reilly Media. On the right hand side, we have just three conferences that I found. ApacheCon, it's the official conference of Apache Software Foundation, and that's the software foundation that supports Hadoop. The Big Data Conference of Europe, that's going to be held in November, and then Strata Data and AI Conference. Ben Lorica is a big part of this. The last one was held in 2019, and moving forward, they're no longer going to hold any in-person conferences, unfortunately, but they will be having sessions and courses and presentations available online throughout the year. So just one of the changes that came forth from COVID. So how did this all change the industry? It improved businesses' abilities to analyze and leverage big data. It's cost effective to store and to analyze large pools. So, this really is just the next iteration of big data analysis. It's more efficient. It's to store. It's quicker to run. So it's just the next iteration in analyzing data. Um, they can in order to, they can use MapReduce to kind of parse your social media data on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Um, it's utilized for big data, just you know lots and lots of information. MapReduce can get through quickly because it splits it out to different parts of the server and then brings it all back together, just being running in parallel and being very efficient. And then it also can be used for advertising to see engagement and click rates. Just very supportive of marketing and advertising. So that's the end of the presentation. This last slide just has many of the resources, or all of the resources that we used to build this presentation. I hope it was informative and you got some really good top level idea of what Hadoop and MapReduce are. And if you have any questions on installing Hadoop onto your Mac OS, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help. Thank you for your attention, and goodbye.